Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of This Week in San Diego Soccer History. I'm John Cross, along with Dylan Wilson, and tonight we are going to preview a couple of our regular episodes where we take a little bit of a snapshot back into San Diego soccer history. We'll be looking at the years 1976 and 2001. And in between, we'll probably sprinkle in a little bit of trivia as well. But before we jump into the show, Dylan, welcome. And how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back and excited about this new project as somebody who, has somehow been here less than 10 years, but feels like I've been through decades of San Diego soccer history. I'm looking forward to kind of digging in on some things that predate me by quite a while in San Diego and both in life, I guess.
Yeah, we will certainly hit some of those this evening, especially getting to the year 1976. Um, like you, I am very excited to start this project. When the two of us together, were doing the LGS pod, the local grassroots story podcast, the the shows we got the most feedback about were the ones where we dove into some kind of soccer history, which kind of gave the impetus for the break we took from that and then to have a new focus and start forward with this project of This Week in San Diego Soccer History. There's some other things a little bit bigger beyond this podcast that we're trying to do as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show as well. But if you're ready, Dylan, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, One of the things we would like to try to start off with is some birthdays and recognize and honor some of the people who have contributed to our local San Diego soccer history. Now, as we build out our database of information, sometimes this is going to be a little bit thin, as it is this week. We have one birthday to recognize. But to all our listeners out there, if you know of any birthdays that are coming up or have a list of players' birthdays or different people, please send them our way so we can add them to our database and we can start acknowledging those people on our show. But for this week, the one birthday that we do have goes to Kennedy Wesley, defender for the San Diego Wave. Her birthday is coming up here on Sunday, March 8th. So I want to wish her a happy birthday. And Kennedy also made a little news for herself this week. She had her first start and first appearance at the She Believes tournament a couple days ago, as we're recording this here on a Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. So she had her debut for the She Believes Cup in that 2-0 win over Argentina.
So I remember, actually, I guess this is not the point of the section necessarily, but I've never actually been totally clear. Are these technically competitive games, this tournament, or is it technically friendly games
Uh,
in the She
I
Believes Cup?
just friendly, just like a four nation tournament.
Okay, sure. That's what I thought, but I wasn't 100% clear on that.
Yeah, which, you know, the men's team used to do that a lot. And when I'm sure we will cover this as it pertains to San Diegans who were represented on the men's national team at various times. But there was a time period before the US men had the budget to go travel and play in friendlies and do things that they created a tournament where they invited people to come and play in the first US Cup, or several rounds in the 90s. So it is, I see this pattern. They've been doing it in women's soccer for quite a while. Different countries or different host nations will invite a small group of top tier teams to come and play and try to get some competitive games in between their normal international competitive fixtures. All right. So let's move. One of the other segments that we want to try to do also is look at current news and event items and find the people who are making history right now. Because one of the things that I have learned in researching history, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, history never stops. We have people making history all the time, setting records, happens, you know, daily around sports and around the world. And in order to help preserve that for future generations, it's important to try to capture that moment now. So in addition to digging through historical items and to bring to people's attention soccer from the past in San Diego, we still want to recognize what's happening now with people who are making that history. So Kennedy Wesley did that with the She Believes Cup. We had a whole slew of individuals and teams do that this last week in our CIF soccer playoffs, which we're going to get to that in just a second. But I do want to highlight one other person who is probably near and dear to a lot of people's hearts in San Diego because we've watched him grow up, and that is Duran Furey, who got his first major league start the weekend before last, got a shutout, started again this last weekend and got a shutout. First player signed by SDFC. I mean, this is what we talk about when we're trying to capture and document current people who are helping to make history for San Diego soccer and kind of establish that culture. So did you get a chance, Dylan, to watch either of the two games with Duran Furey or see any of the highlights as he got his first start?
I did, yeah. I watched most of the first game, um, and truthfully, it didn't even seem like he had that much like goalkeeping to do. I mean, we knew this from his first starts with Loyal that he's a very modern goalkeeper in the sense that he's as good, if not better, than some of the outfield players with his feet. And that was clearly on display in that first game where they won. What I think 5-0 was the final score. I didn't get to watch as much of the second game. I kind of got home later than I was expecting that night, but seemed like it was more or less a similar pattern. I didn't, in the few minutes I watched, I didn't see him have to make any saves. Not that that's a knock on him. Goalkeepers coordinate their defense, so that's props to him as much as it is his defenders. But I think it's a lot to do with the team structure, and it's part of why I think the coach Mike Ivaras probably feels so comfortable, trusting a 19-year-old, right? As he's that good with his feet. But yeah, it was an impressive display, and it is very gratifying, for those of us who I can't believe he's only 19. I remember seeing him when he was 16, and he's grown a lot. Like obviously, that seems like an obvious thing to say,
Yes.
but I remember watching him at 16, thinking, "Oh, that is clearly a child out there," and he looks like a grown man now. And I think he's clearly shown that he's got the drive and the environment around him to reach the potential we all know that he's got. So really happy for him, and I was pretty chuffed to see him wear his San Diego Loyal baseball jersey in his post-match presser after his first not first professional, but first Major League Soccer start. That was very cool. And I know that was not an accident. I know that didn't just happen.
Yeah.
I know he did that on purpose. So very cool of him to do that.
It was certainly a nod, and that was pretty cool. I did see a picture taken from the supporter section and the of Duran Furey basically on the midfield line with SDFC in the attacking half, and just reminiscent of the Loyal days in Coque Vegas, playing all the way out to just like an extra defender. But yeah, looking forward to see some more from Duran Furey and what he is able to accomplish over the rest of his career. So we'll be keeping an eye on him. But Duran Furey, as Dylan, you probably remember, but as I hope most of the people in the county know, is a local product. He went to Del Norte High School. And I bring that up because that leads us into our CIF soccer playoffs that just completed for the boys and the girls this past weekend. So I'm going to run through a list of our current champions, both on the boys' side and the girls' side. And then we'll have a couple of things to talk about those. So first of all, on the boys' side, we have, before we give the winners, there are, for those who are not familiar with the structure of high school soccer in San Diego, there are seven different divisions. There's Division 1 through 5, so D1, D2, D3, all the way to D5. But then above D1 is the open division. That's really the top one. And then below D5 is a D5 AA division for your really, really small schools, mostly a lot of your small charter schools that have some athletics. And also in San Diego, again, for those who don't know, San Diego did away with organizing schools by school size back in 2013, I think it was. And rather, your division is determined by school strength and team strength. So you could have, say, a soccer team that plays in the open division on the boys' side, and the girls' side, they could be in Division 5 or the other way around. So individual teams based on strength. So in effect, our local CIF instituted a variation on promotion relegation way back in 2013. And that's what all the high schools, not just soccer, have been using for all the sports to kind of keep the strongest teams together in the top divisions, and try to reorganize leagues that way as much as possible to try to prevent a maybe smaller school being stuck in a league with a super dominant school, or the flip side of that, having a dominant small school that just kills everybody else and they win every championship every year. And just to try to rebalance the system. So just so everybody's clear how everything's set up. So the Open Division champions for boys this year were Del Norte High School, Duran Free's alma mater. The Division 1 winners were Hilltop, Division 2 Bonita Vista, Division 3 Mount Carmel, Division 4 La Jolla, Division 5 Lincoln, and Division 5 AA was the Chula Vista Learning Community Charter. So those are your 7 boys high school soccer champions for 2026. On the girls' side, we had Mount Carmel High School take the Open Division. Westview took Division 1, Del Norte High School, Division 2, Ramona High School, Division 3, Mission Vista was Division 4, Coastal Academy Division 5, and Calvin Christian was the Division 5 AA champions. Now, a lot of champions, a lot of games. I actually got out to a couple of different games. It was fun to go see. I saw the Del Norte boys and San Pasqual boys play in a semifinal match. And then I got to see the Open Division final between, on the girls' side, between Mount Carmel High School and San Marcos High School, which Mount Carmel High School won on penalty kicks. It was 0-0, but it was one of those 0-0 games that it was still interesting and exciting, and there were opportunities. But no one scored at the end, and they play one golden goal overtime period and then go to penalty kicks. And the Mount Carmel goalkeeper in the 6th round of penalty kicks came up with a save to win the championship for their team. So that was fun to be out and watch and catch some local soccer, and saw some friends who were out there as well. Matt Hall, former goalkeeper coach for the Loyal, he was out there along with the Gwynns. That would be the Tony Gwynn's family, because his granddaughters play on the Mount Carmel High School team. So it was fun. It was a good time out there at the championship. But I wanted to ask you, Dylan, because I know I tried to get some people to go out different times. Did you get a chance to catch any of the games this year?
No, I did not. Like I said, I moved to the area in 2019. So having not grown up here, I'm not terribly familiar with any of the like schools wider structure. I know like I could tell you what schools I drive by and bike by and walk by on my day-to-day
Right.
life, but other than that, I'm not super familiar. So
Yeah, we'll make a note that there were 2 schools, Del Norte and Mount Carmel, where both their boys and their girls team were crowned CIF champions. That doesn't happen very often. That's going to tie into our first trivia question we have this evening, but we'll get to that in just a second. But did want to let people know that in 2008, I think it was, California changed the way they do their championships. For a long time, it was just you did your section championship. So if you were CIF champions of San Diego, you were done. In 2008, they started doing a regional Southern California championship. So teams could advance and play the other regions from Southern California to try to see who is the Southern California champion. And then from there, this is the very first year in 2026 that the state of California is doing a full state championship for soccer. So whoever the Southern California champion is going to meet the Northern California champion a little bit later. So this will be the first year we have a true state champion in California. And those first round games in at least the Southern California regionals are happening right now as we record this for most of them. Most of them had 5 o'clock kickoffs, anywhere from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock kickoffs. One I think was at 3, but I didn't get a result on that one before we got started. But we have all those regional playoffs that are starting. So, and some of them are being hosted here locally if they're a higher seeded team. The only unfortunate thing for us, because of the way teams were seeded, because that's how they're plotted in the chart by seeding, it just so happens that pretty much every San Diego pairing in a bracket, if they both win this first round, they're going to face off against each other in the next round in almost every instance, which usually doesn't happen. It just was a product of where they fell seeding wise in Southern California. So we'll see. Our San Diego schools have at least from 2009 maybe 2010, somewhere around there. We've had at least one San Diego school win a Southern California regional championship every year except for one. So like 10 out of 11 years. And some years we've won like 4 or 5 titles at the Southern California regionals for San Diego schools. So if you want to check those out, you can go to the CIF website or the Max Preps website, because again, those matches are happening on Tuesday. They'll probably happen again on Thursday. And I think the finals are going to be on Saturday for Southern California, and then maybe the next week for the state championships. So if you want to check those out, there's still an opportunity to do so. All right, Dylan, do you have, I guess we should do the schools that are in there first, but I'll let you jump in if you have anything else before we list the schools that have actually made it to the regionals.
Nothing in particular. I'm just looking through the brackets now, and it's kind of funny because I'm recognizing a lot of the NorCal schools, but like I said, the SoCal schools, like I just don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. Well, on the boys' side, the teams that did make it to the regionals are Del Norte, St. Augustine, Torrey Pines, San Pasqual, Bonita Vista, Mount Carmel, La Jolla, and Lincoln. All right, that should be 8 teams there. And on the girls' side, the 8 teams that made it are Mount Carmel, San Marcos, Carlsbad, Westview, La Costa Canyon, Del Norte, Ramona, and Coastal Academy.
I've got some bad news about San Marcos. They lost their first round game 5-0 today, it looks like.
Okay.
To Mater D, Mater Day. I'm not sure how you
Mater Day.
Mater Day. Okay. Not even close.
Yeah, I tried to check some of those scores beforehand, but they hadn't come in yet, even though the games had likely finished. They just
credit to them for having same day updates for high school sports. That definitely was not the case when I was in high school. So
yeah, no. So that's it's been fun. We'll keep track and see if we have any schools that that make it to the end. See if we get a San Diego school crowned as a state champion for the first year. We'll see. There's some good schools out there, so it'll be tough. All right, you ready to do our first trivia?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let me get this set up here. All right, for our first trivia, first question, we talked about there were 2 schools that both the boys and girls had won their CIF title in the same year. So our trivia question is, what was the very first San Diego County high school to have both the boys and the girls win the CIF title in the same year? So, Dylan, I know you said you're not from around here, so this won't mean as much. And, for people who are, of a certain age or who grew up here, this will certainly have more meaning. And we'll give the answer here after the next section. But I will give you a chance if you want to venture a guess. But as you said, you probably don't know the names of too many schools, even right off the bat.
Well, I will say that I do have access to the answer just because I have the running.
I didn't know if you had read that far through
the notes. I did briefly skim the notes this afternoon, but I will be fair and tell you that I have never heard of that school before in my life, so I'm not going to give myself the point on that one.
Yeah. Well, we'll give the answer here after this first segment. So if people are listening to this or watching this later, they can have a chance to think about it and figure it out. But let's get to our first snapshot segment, unless you have anything else.
No, let's do it.
All right. So for our snapshot segments, as we said, we are trying to look back at a period in time, look at that week and just get a snapshot of what was happening in San Diego soccer for that particular week. And we have picked as a regular segment for this season in 2026 for us, we have picked 1976 as one of our snapshots. That's 50 years ago, because we had the San Diego Jaws from the NASL playing here, which is the precursor to the San Diego Soccers. And we thought it'd be fun if we keep doing these snapshots periodically to kind of follow the San Diego Jaws season as it was happening. And we will also do some more in-depth pieces separate from these snapshots. But let's go ahead and get into our very first snapshot here. And this is going to be for Monday, March 1st through Sunday, March 7th in 1976. All right, so just for some cultural context here for this week, if John Williams is celebrating his very first Grammy for the soundtrack to the 1975 summer blockbuster Jaws. Martin Scorsese's film Taxi Driver is still at the top of the box office, generating controversy for its graphic nature and the casting of Jodie Foster as a 12-year-old. And if you're familiar with the movie, you will know why. ABC's hit show Happy Days, which is #1 in the ratings, is wrapping up its third season and just launched its first spinoff, Laverne and Shirley. And in this final episode of season 3, we have the final appearance of Pat Morita as Arnold. And those of you of a younger generation will probably remember Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. And then finally, the Ramones have just released Blitzkrieg Bop, their very first single, setting the stage for the summer's punk rock music revolution. That's your kind of cultural background, but this is what was happening in San Diego soccer. Just like now, the 1975-76 boys high school soccer season had just wrapped up. Chula Vista High School, coached by Mike Hovnick, secured its first ever CIF title with a 2-1 victory over Castle Park High School. Chula Vista is led by senior midfielder Alex Fernandez. Alex Fernandez was also named CIF Player of the Year, making him the first CIF San Diego section boys soccer player to earn back-to-back Player of the Year honors. In professional soccer news, San Diego Jaws, the NASL entry from San Diego, are busy trying to fill out their roster. They have a match coming up this following week. They made a trade with San Jose Earthquakes, sending defender Jeff Butler up to San Jose along with a 1978 first-round draft pick. And in return, they acquired forward Archie Robustoff and goalkeeper Gary St. Clair. Later in the week, they would also pick up a couple other players, Philip Cole, who is a right winger, and Lynn Rennery, a defender from the United Kingdom, bringing their roster to a grand total of 8. 8 players. They need to have 16 players to officially compete in their first preseason match the following week. So we'll be picking it up next episode to see how they get along signing those last players and make it to their first preseason match. And Lynn Rennery is a signing that technically at this point is new to the San Diego Jaws, but he had played for the Boston Comets, and the Boston Comets is the team that left, Baltimore Comets, and left Baltimore and then came over to San Diego to be reformed as the Jaws. All right, that is your San Diego soccer history snapshot for Monday, March 1st through Sunday, March 8th, 1976. Dylan, I know it's before your time, before you were even born, but any thoughts on what we just heard for our little peek into San Diego soccer history from 50 years ago?
Not too much, but just to give a little bit of my NorCal, you know, background spin on this. I believe this would have been the earthquakes when they were still in their red and black color scheme era, leaning into kind of. I think they use it as kind of a retro kit thing now. It was an identity they tried to bury for a long time, and then people found it and were like, "Oh, this was actually pretty cool." So that it's kind of interesting to see reference to earthquakes in that era. And then I did want to say too that the Happy Days thing made me laugh. I believe that's 2 seasons before the phrase "jumping the shark" was invented and coined by. Well, I don't know.
It
I guess they
is,
didn't coin it, but it derives from what, like season 5, I think, of Happy Days, something like
I,
that.
I, I don't know which season it is specifically, but yes, it was an episode where Fonzie jumps a shark on
Literally
skis.
jumps over a shark. Yes,
And that's where the phrase comes from,
and that's where we get the
signifying
term.
a
Yes.
once popular show that has started to dip in the ratings and they're desperately trying to do stuff to get an audience back. Um, but yes, kind of the meme of jumping the shark actually comes from Happy Days. I'm sure when we get to that week, we will
Oh
reference
boy.
that for the particular episode. Another thing from Happy Days that I had forgotten because I'm at this time 8 years old when this is all happening. Um, in a couple years later, somewhere maybe fifth season of Happy Days, um, they have an episode that spawns another one of their spinoffs, which is Mork and Mindy, is where Robin Williams was introduced. But I deeply remember that episode as a kid and Robin Williams as a character and then that show as well. So yeah, I'm sure I think it's fun when we look at the soccer history to also put some cultural context in there of what else was going on to kind of, you know, get people in the time frame.
Well, and it can help color, decisions, even business ones or, like cultural ones being made around soccer, right? Like, not that Happy Days has anything to do with the San Diego Jaws per se, but sometimes the larger cultural moment and context can color the way that we look at stories. So I think it's always important to give as much context as you can.
Yeah, and one of the things I found interesting with the Jaws, and at first when I read it, I was like, oh my God, a week before your first match and you don't even have half your roster, you haven't officially signed like everybody else. I don't know if that's par for the course for the NASL, but then I go back to USL stuff and other things and just hear about people signing players, in this last month before the season, getting ready. But um, maybe not too much has changed in American soccer in 50 years, in terms of being very professional outside of Major League Soccer. Even for all its faults, it does do some things very well. All right, so that was one of the things I thought was interesting. I also am very intrigued by this Alex Hernandez, the high schooler who won back-to-back CIF titles way back in the 70s, because his younger brother, Vidal Fernandez, played at San Diego State, got drafted by the Cosmos in the NASL, was on the same team, this Chula Vista High School team, and played and was highly recognized and was first team All CIF. But he played for the Sockers. He did lots of things. I wonder what happened to Alex Fernandez, his older brother. Did he go and play anywhere? Because his younger brother did. But when they were on the same team only a year apart, the older brother was recognized as the stronger player. Um, so I'm curious if he ever went and played somewhere. So that's something maybe we'll have to investigate a little more. It could be a segment um, a little bit later on in our season coming up. Maybe we'll circle back to that if we can find anything out, or if anybody in our audience knows. Um, we'd love to hear. Shoot us a note and let us know if you have any leads on that we can follow up on. All right. Are you ready, I guess, to get to the answer to our trivia question before we go and move on to our next snapshot segment?
I am.
All right. Here we go. So our question was, right, what was the first San Diego County high school to have both the boys and the girls win the CIF title in the same year, just like Del Norte and Mount Carmel both did this year? And the answer to that is Valhalla High School in 1987. You said you had never heard of Valhalla High School. Valhalla is out in the East County. I believe their coach at this time was George Logan, who was, I don't know if he was the first coach at SDSU for their men's team, but he was one of the early, very successful coaches at San Diego State, and then also coached over at Valhalla High School. And they were a dominant force when he was the coach over there. And I remember the very first time I met George Logan, he was very old. He was a referee, and people would kind of joke that refereed youth. I was coaching club soccer, and he'd just kind of sit in the middle and would barely move more than 10 yards from the midline. And everybody used to kind of make fun of him. But he called the game better than just about any of the other refs out there because he knew the game very well. He just kind of walked from one end of the circle to the other end of the circle, and that was about it in terms of doing his refereeing. But George Logan is another person I'm sure we will highlight a little bit later as we dig a little deeper into our San Diego soccer history. All right, so let's go ahead and we can get ready for our second history snapshot. We are going to go back to 2001, so 25 years back. And just like we picked 50 years back to do the San Diego Jaws because it's their 50th anniversary, we picked 2001 and go 25 years back because it's the 25th anniversary of the San Diego Spirit, which is the very first Division I women's professional team we had in San Diego. That was part of the very first Division I professional outdoor women's league in the United States, in the WUSA. So again, like the Jaws, we'll follow little snapshots and kind of see how their season progressed as we start moving forward, as well as take a look at what else was going on in San Diego soccer at that time. So let's go ahead and start our next history snapshot, which will be for Monday, February 22nd through Sunday, March 4th, 2001. All right, for some cultural context, U2 is having a beautiful day after winning Song of the Year at the 43rd Grammy Awards. And sports NASCAR fans continue to mourn the death of Dale Earnhardt, who had a fatal crash on the final lap of the Daytona 500 in the previous weekend, I believe, to this. And after 3 years in local sports news, the Chargers finally waive their 1998 first-round draft pick quarterback, Ryan Leaf. All right, there's your cultural context, and this is what was happening in San Diego soccer. Because we are in the same time of year, we are in the process of wrapping up high school CIF soccer, although high school soccer is running a little bit later, and San Diego is getting hit with very bad storms at this time of year, and I do remember this at 2001. This is at a time where I was also coaching high school soccer. We were not deep in the playoffs at this point with my high school soccer team. But in the middle of all the storms, trying to get the semifinals and finals in, where what were happening, scrambling, games getting rescheduled and rearranged, because 2001 didn't have all the turf fields that we have now. We are still mostly playing on grass fields. It was just kind of starting that transition period where schools were switching to turf. So they're still mostly grass fields, and when it rained, it got muddy and you just couldn't play. So unfortunately, as this week progressed, the Division I and Division III soccer finals had to get postponed to the following week. But Division Two and Division Four were able to complete their finals, and those all were played at Southwestern College. 3 of those 4 finals went to extra time. The one that didn't was the Division Four girls final, which Coronado won with a 2-1 victory over Francis Parker. In the Division Two girls final, it did go to extra time, but we did have a goal, and Mira Mesa High School defeated Helix by a score of 2-1. In the Division Two boys final, San Pasqual and Valhalla, there you go, Valhalla again. San Pasqual and Valhalla could not determine a victor at the end of regulation or extra time. And at that time, CIF did not do penalty kicks. So we had co-champions in Division Two, both San Pasqual and Valhalla after their match ended 1-1. But the big exciting match was actually the Division Four boys final. That did go to extra time. It did finish tied. We did have co-champions. But the storylines here is we had a first-year coach from Santa Fe Christian, Paul Lyons. He led his team all the way to the final against the Division Four juggernaut, which was the Bishop School, led by legendary local coach Malcolm Tovey. The Bishops, at this time, were coming into their 13th straight Division Four final. It was a wild second half. 4 goals were scored in the span of 10 minutes, but neither could score in the extra time period. So as we said, it ended 2-2 between Santa Fe Christian and Bishops, and they both were co-champions for Division 4, and we'd have to wait another week for Division 1 and Division 3. In professional soccer, in the same week, San Diego Flash were around. They were having local open tryouts at Maricosta College ahead of the upcoming USL A-League season. So that doesn't sound familiar. There are so many name changes that have happened through the USL over the years. So this was the USL A-League at the time, and they're trying to round out their roster to get ready for the 2001 season. In fact, if I remember correctly, at some point very soon, the San Diego Flash this year in 2001 get taken over by the La Jolla Nomads and actually rename themselves to San Diego FC. So not the first time we've had a club in the county named San Diego FC.
It's
On the women's
honestly
side,
shocking to me 2 people managed to come up with the exact same name like that.
it is shocking. The San Diego Spirit, and as we mentioned, they are getting set for their inaugural season in the WUSA, and this was the week they opened their preseason camp. They were scheduled to start at UCSD, but with all the storms and the rain and the grass fields there, they had to shift and move down to the Arco Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista, and that's where they kicked off their preseason camp with Julie Foudy and San Pasqual High School alum Shannon McMillan leading the way for the San Diego Spirit. At the same time, Torero Field was going through some upgrades. It only had a seating capacity of about 3,000 prior to the Spirit coming. And at this time, they are resodding the field and upgrading the seating capacity to more than 7,000 seats. So if I remember correctly, for those who remember back from the loyal days of going to watch soccer, this was all the behind the goal seats and the what is now the press box side, but all the metal bleacher seats were all the new things that had gone in specifically for the San Diego Spirits season, and all those upgrades at the University of San Diego. And finally, in U.S. men's national soccer team news, we had 2 San Diegans that were represented. Well, one was San Diego High School, San Diego High School alum Frankie Haydick, and not yet San Diego Loyal head coach Landon Donovan. We're both with the U.S. men's national team this week. There were 2 matches. They both started in the second match, which was played over the weekend, a 2-1 loss to Brazil up at the Rose Bowl, but that wasn't really the big game of the week. The big game of the week was earlier on a Wednesday. It was February 28th. And the U.S. men's national team would defeat Mexico 2-0 in Columbus, Ohio, in the opening of the final round of qualification for the 2002 World Cup. And those of us of the right age would refer to that as the opening round of the Hex. And it was the first time Mexico or the United States had defeated Mexico in a World Cup qualifier since 1980. Sadly, both Haydick and Donovan finished the night as unused subs in that match, so they would not see the field. But that is the famous 2-0 match that gets referenced quite frequently in U.S. men's national team lore. And that is your San Diego soccer history snapshot for Monday, February 6th through Sunday, March 4th, 2001. Dylan, you were alive for this,
Yeah,
but I
not.
imagine not terribly tuned in yet.
No, I was not really particularly aware of San Diego yet. I will say though that my overwhelming reaction was actually like, man, Ryan Leaf was hard done by because he's still pointed to as like the quintessential example of a draft bust, and there have been worse draft picks since Ryan Leaf in 1998. And I don't know, maybe it's just an age thing. Like I was right in the right age bracket for where that's like a point of reference for people. But like it's been like almost 30 years. Like we got to cut the guy some slack at this point. So that I know that's not soccer related, but I had to say it.
Yeah, I'm not sure in San Diego he's ever going to get cut much slack.
No, and so there you go. There's my non-local bias, but
Right.
boy, I hadn't thought about that guy in years.
I hadn't either, and when I was going through old newspaper articles, looking through this stuff, you're in the sports pages, but I usually just jump directly to the soccer articles. I don't go around. Sometimes I kind of I skim around because it's all looking digitally, and or something may catch my eye, but it's almost always something that is, you know, Padres have a like right now at this time of year, Padres have a spring training match coming up, or pitchers and catchers are reporting. It's nothing super exciting. But then I saw that because it was next to a different front page article about the CIF soccer playoffs, and I was like, oh, I think for San Diegans
Yeah.
that is a vivid memory.
Where were you when Ryan Leaf was cut?
Yeah, not sure I could say where I was, but I remember that the whole tenure of Ryan Leaf and how someone who came out so promising as a college player, at least what it looked like on the field. But I think if anybody, once stuff came out afterwards, if anybody truly would have investigated a little better about off-field kind of things, might have thought twice about where he got drafted. He probably still would have been drafted, but maybe shouldn't have gone as a number one. Certainly the talent was there,
Yeah.
but didn't have kind of the rest of the package that you need to have to make it at an elite level in any sport.
Unfortunate, but many such cases.
Yeah. All right. So that was our second of our snapshot segments. So we have those done. I guess time for another trivia question here before we talk about something else. So let me go ahead and cue that one up. See if you have this one's going to be super difficult, but it ties into some other things. So I doubt very many people will get the answer to this. So we had a back-to-back CIF Player of the Year on the boys' side. So on the girls in 1992 and 1993, this was the first girls soccer player to win back-to-back CIF Player of the Year honors. Can you name her and name the school? Now, Dylan, I don't expect you to name this. We will give the answer, but also tie into someone who is from that same time period in high school soccer that will be very, very familiar to lots of people. So we'll do that when we get the answer for that one. But I think we'll go ahead and move into our final topic here quickly. before we wrap up. Um, and that's just, I mean, normally we'd cover another story right now, but really we just want to talk about what we're trying to do here with the This Week in San Diego Soccer History podcast. Uh, we introduced two of the segments that we're going to do fairly regularly, those snapshot segments looking back at 1976 and 2001. But we're also going to dive into some other topics more deeply, like the San Diego Jaws and the San Diego Spirit, really kind of look at their seasons and why things happened the way they did, um, and their successes on and off the field, but dive in a little deeper just than some kind of newspaper snapshots of what was going on. And we'll do some other things like I mentioned during this episode. I'm very intrigued about Alex Fernandez and what happened with him, since Vidal Fernandez, his younger brother, has just a strong, rich soccer playing history in San Diego with lots of clubs. So I'm curious to see what happened. Again, if any of our listeners out there or viewers have any ideas, please drop us a note. I'd love to know so we could follow up on that. And give us suggestions if you have anything else you'd like us to investigate a little more deeply on our podcast. We will be doing that throughout our run of this series of This Week in San Diego Soccer History. But part of a bigger picture, this podcast is just one small part of what we're trying to do at the San Diego Soccer History Society. And one of the first big steps of the San Diego Soccer History Society is to organize as a 501c3 organization. And we want this to be something that is built by our soccer community for the soccer community. So several ways you could help if you're interested. One, please spread the word as much as you can. That's the simplest, easiest thing. Let people know what we're doing and have them come check out the podcast or check out what we're doing as the Soccer History Society. Like the normal things on YouTube, like, subscribe, rate, review, all those, they help with the algorithms. If you're interested in volunteering your time to actually help us do what we're trying to do, uncover some hidden gems in our soccer history, please contact me. Let me see if I can get this up on the screen here. John at bigpinedigital.com. You can send me an email and then I will connect with you on how you can help out. And then once we set up as a 501c3, we're going to need people to donate to kind of help us do what we need to do. And part of that is raising some money so we can get access to some better digital archive subscriptions to dig deeper into San Diego soccer history. Okay, that kind of wraps up what we're trying to do with the podcast and San Diego soccer history. Dylan, do you have anything to add to that? And while you think about that, I'm going to kind of get the answer to the trivia question here set up.
No, I don't have too much to add. I think you've covered it really. I look forward to kind of as we begin to get more regular and kind of give ourselves a little room to get a little more creative. But I think hopefully we can build a proper little community around this project, and I look forward to seeing how that develops.
Yeah, I do as well. Let's go ahead and check out the answer for our trivia question. So again, the question was, in 1992 and 1993, she was the first girls soccer player to win back-to-back CIF Player of the Year honors. Name the player and the school. The answer here is Maggie Merritt from San Diego High School. She helped lead San Diego High School to 3 straight Division I CIF titles from 91 to 93. Now, I mentioned this, I didn't expect anybody to get that answer, right? That is a little more obscure because Maggie Merritt went to USC, but then transferred to San Diego State, but not to play soccer, to play golf, from my understanding. So she didn't really go on to, as best to my knowledge right now. So again, if anybody out there has some better information or some leads we can follow up on, but I haven't been able to find anything yet on what she did soccer-wise after high school. But she was 1 year younger than another very famous female soccer player from the time period that we all know, Shannon McMillan, who also was in the running for Player of the Year. And Shannon McMillan did win 2 CIF Player of the Year honors. They just weren't back to back. She won it in her sophomore year and her senior year. And now I'm desperate to get the chance to ask her what happened her junior year that she didn't win the CIF Player of the Year, because she won it in her sophomore year a year. Maybe was that 90? I guess that was 90. So she won in 90 and 92. So she could have been the first female CIF back-to-back Player of the Year winner, but I don't know. I don't know if she just had an off season or someone had a stellar season in
Wonder if
92.
maybe she had
Or
an
sorry, in
injury
91.
or something as
Yeah,
well.
or an injury or something happened. But I found it interesting. She won it as a sophomore and she won it as a senior, but she didn't win it as a junior. So now I'm really curious as to what the story is there as to why. But that's, again, didn't expect anyone to get the answer correct on that unless you happen to have gone to school at the same time period and knew the player, then knew Maggie Merritt. Otherwise, I wouldn't expect anybody to get that one. But now I'm very curious about the Shannon McMillan stuff. All right. To close out, we'll be back next week with another episode, and we'll do some more snapshots, and we will probably have a segment, our very first segment, where we do a deeper dive on the San Diego Jaws. We'll probably get that next week, and coming up very soon, three weeks from today, will be the actual 50th anniversary of when Pele and the Cosmos came to San Diego. So we'll do a special episode on that night here in 3 weeks. Dylan, do you have anything to add before we head on out?
No, I guess it's not soccer related, but it's Archie's birthday in a few days. Archie, right here.
Yeah.
Go ahead and throw that on the birthday list for next.
All right, we'll have to celebrate Archie.
Yeah, big soccer fan.
All right, we're gonna do something with this particular podcast. Since we've been doing trivias, we're going to finish up every episode with a trivia question that we are not going to answer till the next episode. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that up on the screen, and then we will officially sign off. So Dylan, I know I just asked you, but I'll ask you one more time if you have any last steps. Otherwise, we're gonna close it out with a trivia question and sign off for the evening.
No, sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. I was going to say, just the usual Blue Sky. Check us out. I guess I don't have it on my subheading there, but DWill27 on like everything. Or I guess it's 94 on Blue Sky. Whatever. Come find me on Blue Sky.
And we are also on Blue Sky. If you find us at at SD Soccer HIST, HIST.org. All right, here's our trivia question. We'll pull it up here. And we want to know who was the first female coach to take their soccer team to the CIF final. All right, who was the first soccer coach to take their soccer team to the CIF final? We're going to leave that there. And if you want to know the answer to that question, you'll have to join us next time on This Week in San Diego Soccer History. Good night, everyone.